I'm Trisha Peach, host of the Peach Buzz, and I'm very excited to be back again this week. I had laryngitis last week, so I had to do no talking for 24 hours. That was not cool. Anyone who knows me, you're like, you failed at that, didn't you? Yes, I did. But I'm getting my voice back. It's going well. And I'm excited because we've been planning this for a while. Someone I met at some of my favorite conferences, Brittney Nelson, has released her first book, which I think is so exciting because she travels and teaches. So I see her at a lot of the same conferences. So this is from a wealth of knowledge and many years of experiences. And she is founder and creator of Deeper KidMin. If you don't know what that is, welcome to Kids Ministry. And we love having you here. And Brittney has been writing and teaching and doing these things for quite some time. So I was excited to get hold of her book. Here it is. And to get to review this. So, she's got hers there too. Twins. I wrote about it in my blog this week. I'll put a link there so you guys can read my blog if you want to read my written review of it. I, of course, love it. Anytime new books are coming out, I've said the Christian market is not saturated, not even close, especially not in kids ministry. And we all should be learning, growing, figuring out what's going on. And I am very excited. So I actually asked the author to come on here today, Brittney Nelson, and she graciously agreed that she'd come on because I know she's passionate about this subject. It's all over the pages of the book. And if you're wondering what the book is all about, from my perspective, it says time to update. This is such a good book. I'd heard Jim Weideman's rave reviews on it. So I loved it because it's talking about upgrading our ministry, updating what we're doing in a technologically advanced age. This is Gen Alpha. This is the language they speak. So to me, this was about the ways that you need to make digital disciples. I love it. One of my favorite in there is when she talks about no excuses, because a lot of my generation, I'm Gen X, I'm going to date myself here. I'm almost 46. So we say, well, I'm just not good at technology. I'm just not good at technology. But if God has called you to work with kids ministry, youth ministry or kids ministry, I think that's a cop out. And you're going to hamstring yourself. You're not going to be very effective. So I love this book. So one of the questions that I had for you was, what was your inspiration for writing this book? What made you decide I'm going to sit down and write this all out?
Yeah. Great question. And thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here and to talk with you about it. So I started writing the book in April of 2020. So we were right in the middle of the pandemic, right? And trying to figure out what ministry looked like online, because online was our only option. And I didn't call it a book. I didn't say I'm writing a book, because that was too scary. And so I actually called it a project for like the first year of working on it. But in April 2020, I texted my best friend and I texted a mentor of mine and said, hey, I think I'm writing a book about digital discipleship and what it looks like in children's ministry. And I'm telling you so that you can hold me accountable to it in the coming years. But I really wanted to write it because I noticed that we were just completely thrown into the deep end of the digital world when the pandemic hit and everything shut down, right? And digital was our only option. So it started out as okay, what do we do? Right? Let's figure this out. And then as we moved past the pandemic, I realized there's things that we learned from when, the time when digital was our only option that we can't completely eliminate and let go of now that we have moved past it and are able to do ministry in person again, which, thank the Lord, right? That's so much better than having Zoom meetings with your children's ministry all the time. But there were things that we learned when digital was our only option that still, I think, have to carry over into what we're doing now. And I have two little girls. So I have a 10-month-old and 3.5-year-old, and they are so digital. It's crazy, right? Like I told my 3-year-old, oh, I'm going to go record a podcast. And she was like, okay, bye, mom. Like that was not anything weird for her to hear,
Awesome. That's so cool.
So she knows what podcasts are. Like we've listened to the VeggieTales podcast. Like they're just so digital. Like they just know these things. And so I was like, well, my girls are in the children's ministry now. Like
Yes.
I want our children's ministries to be updated for them. Like I know that the way that we're doing things has to be updated to reach this next generation because they're so influenced by the digital world for better and for worse, right? And we can have those conversations. I don't get into that too much in the book because I'm just focused on, hey, this is our reality, like it or not, what do we do with it? But that's really why, that's where the inspiration of the book came from, was kind of watching and walking through the pandemic with children's ministry leaders and what we had to figure out during that time, but then also seeing my own kids and knowing that yeah, we can reach this generation better when we're cognizant of the digital world and allow it to influence the way we do ministry.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you're definitely invested. You're invested because of your own daughters and the ministry that you've been doing. I love that. And I love that in the middle of the pandemic, you were finding these treasures and compiling them for those of us. So good was coming out of this. Good was coming out of a very tough time. I love that.
For sure.
I love that, like you said, you don't spend 3 chapters trying to convince people that technology is good or bad. You're just that's one of the things I love the most is it's so practical. It's not oh, you guys should love kids ministry, and you're like, we do. No, this is great. I love how you talk about Gen Alpha and that this is the language they speak, and digital disciples. I love that term as well. And I like that you have practical steps for connecting with your volunteers and managing volunteers. So if you could share a little bit about that, because you talk about managing volunteers and connecting with parents, which we talk about is so important. I think that would really hamstring someone that just says, I don't want to do anything digital. And yet that's a huge part of the job, isn't it? Connecting with your volunteers and trainings and
absolutely
connecting with parents.
Yeah, absolutely. So each chapter in the book, so the subtitle of the book is 7 areas to integrate digital discipleship into your children's ministry strategy. So I am all about easing the fear and the overwhelm that comes with the term digital discipleship, because I think we hear that and we think, oh gosh, like something else I have to do as a children's ministry leader, But what I really want people to understand is that digital discipleship is a strategy that you can incorporate into what you're already doing. So you're already connecting with parents. You're already connecting with your volunteers. What my book really tries to give ideas for and encourage toward is how do you allow the digital world to make that easier and to make that more effective and more efficient. And so when it comes to volunteers, the way that you schedule them, the way that you communicate with them, if you have remind groups that you can text them things, right? Like even just something as simple as emailing your volunteers ahead of time with a digital copy of the lesson, like that's digital discipleship, right? So if you're already doing that, woohoo, high five, like you're already doing it. And so connecting with parents, I think, is a big one too. Social media, I think, is a hugely, hugely untapped resource for children's ministry leaders to connect with parents. A lot of times we think like, oh, I'm going to make this post for the kids. Kids aren't really on social media, right? Or they shouldn't be. A lot of them have even age limits that they have to be 13 and older in order to even have an account. So think about the parents of your ministry when you are thinking about what do I post on social media and how can you encourage and equip them in their day-to-day lives, because parents are on social media, right? Like we just know that's where people hang out, that's where people live. And so in addition to maybe your parent resource corner or shelves or whatever that you might have in person, or the handout that you give them on the way home, like how could you take that Sunday morning handout and break it into pieces that becomes digital content for your social media, right? So maybe there's an activity, like that's one post. Maybe there's a special prayer, that's another post, right? So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to add more to your plate. You just take what you already have and look at ways to use the digital world to help connect with parents and volunteers more effectively, more efficiently, more often, right? Because
Oh,
if you
yes.
hand them that paper on Sunday morning, who knows where it ends up? But if you post on social media throughout the week, right? Like then you've got those more opportunities to connect with parents.
I completely agree. I've heard the pushback of, well, none of these kids are on Facebook, but all of their parents seem to be, and Instagram.
Yep.
I know Facebook's for the older ones like me, but we noticed that we were getting so much traffic on our Facebook site, and they would go there to look for all the updates, and they were going there to look for the details on upcoming events, and we weren't hardly getting any on our website.
Interesting.
They were all going to Facebook and Instagram
Yeah.
because they'd forget, and that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yep.
And they could just, oh, okay, well, that's what we need to bring to the outreach today. That worked best for us.
Yeah.
I wondered if you had a favorite chapter that you would recommend to people that
I do.
they really, really need to read.
Yes. So my favorite chapter is also the longest one. And that's probably why it's the longest one, because I felt like I just had so much to say. But my favorite chapter is Teaching Digital Natives. And so it defines
Chapter
who
2.
digital natives are. Yes. So it defines who digital natives are. And they are anyone born in the 1980s or after, and then really specifically in the mid 2000s or after. So that means digital natives were born into a world where technology has always existed. It's just been part of their lives. Computers have been part of their lives for their entire existence. I can see that in my own kids.
Yes.
My daughter like knows how to use a laptop. Like I've never sat her down and taught her how to use it. And she doesn't get to use my one that works, but she plays with my old one and she pops it open and says, "Okay, mommy, I'm having a VBS meeting," and I'm like, "Okay, well, you let me know how that goes." But they just know, right? Like just like a desk chair and a desk are just common fixtures in our offices, right? Like computers and the internet and smartphones are just common fixtures in the lives of kids today. And so that has influenced the way that they learn. It's influenced their brains, like kids' brains. And I really nerd out about the brain science behind it, but like kids' brains are physically different than they were even 10 to 15 years ago.
Wow.
And so the way that they're wired is different now. And so the way that we teach them also has to be different. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, Brittney, you're going to tell me I just need to play a video." No, actually, I say don't just play a video. That's not a good idea.
Yeah.
It's great to use video as a supplement and as a way to kind of re-engage or as a transition element. But most of the chapter is focused on ways to update your teaching methods and strategies to better engage them. So it's not about using technology in your teaching. There is that part, that element kind of in that chapter, but most of the chapter focuses on, okay, how do you teach so that this generation of digital natives wants to listen and wants to engage and wants to learn? So that's my favorite chapter. It's just a fun one.
It's a great one. That's a really good one. I've noticed too, though, like my age group, if you'd thrown in a video, they probably would have watched it. My kids, it's sometimes hard to get them to watch a movie because that's too long.
Yeah.
And then YouTube videos, maybe, but a lot of them prefer TikTok because it's so short.
Sure. So quick. Yeah.
And if you try to just pop in a video and have that run for an hour.
Yeah. Oh gosh. No, that's way too long.
Yeah, they can't.
Way too long.
They can't. Yeah, the transition times is a great time for it. And anything that can be interactive. I love it. I love it.
Yep.
And I feel like you said, this is how their brains are wired. So we can keep hammering them with another language that they don't understand and that their brains may not even be able to fully connect with, or we can learn the language and equip ourselves. And a great way to equip yourself, KidMin Leader, is to go get this. I'm going to put the link right down below. If you could offer a word of advice or encouragement to the KidMin leaders that are watching this, the ones that watch this, some are paid, some are not, some are part-time, some are full-time.
Yeah.
Some are student ministries actually, or even senior pastors, but they're in the trenches. They're working with kids and they're here to learn. If you have any encouragement you could offer them.
Sure. So let's see. Well, first I'll be specific with digital discipleship. When it comes to digital discipleship, take a deep breath. You don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to change everything that you're doing. You don't have to add anything to your plate, right? We live in what's called the age of acceleration, which means things are adapting and changing faster than the human brain can even keep up with. So if you feel behind and overwhelmed, it's because we are behind and overwhelmed, right? And so there's a little bit of freedom that comes in knowing we couldn't possibly keep up even if we wanted to, right? So rest in that it's okay to not have all the answers or make all these changes to your ministry all at once. So I would say start small, right? Choose one thing, choose one area of your ministry. And how can you take steps forward with that, with digital discipleship? And then in just general encouragement, I would say thank you. I don't think ministry leaders hear that enough. So I'm a former children's pastor. My husband is a youth pastor. Now I get to volunteer in children's ministry, and we have an amazing children's pastor at our church. So from a former children's pastor, thank you. From a current volunteer, thank you. But then most importantly, from a mom, thank you, ministry leaders, for what you guys do, because it is so valuable to the kids and families that you serve, even if they don't always say it as often as maybe we need to hear it. But that's my encouragement. Thank you. Keep it up.
Oh my goodness. I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show today, Brittney. I've been touched. I think they have as well. Again, you can pick up her book at the link. And if you want to check out Deeper KidMin, that would be great. I'm sure she'd love that.
Absolutely.
Is there a way in Deeper KidMin that they could contact you if they had a question?
Yes, absolutely. So Brittney at Deeper KidMin is my email, BRITTANY@deeperkidmin.com. There's also lots of ways. I think there's a contact us on the Deeper KidMin website. You can find Deeper KidMin on Instagram and Facebook. Just at Deeper KidMin is our usernames and our tags. So yeah, find us online and connect with us there. And if you have questions, please reach out. I would love to talk more.
That's fantastic. Thank you again so much for coming on. And I'm just wishing all the best for Time to Update. And I'm excited for our viewers to get to check this out. So everybody at home, thank you as always for what you do for Jesus and his kids. What you do matters. And thank you so much for taking a moment of your day. We will see you next week on the Peach Buzz.